In fact, if anybody in the chat room, just give me a thumbs up to make sure everything is straight. Can you hear me clearly? All right. Okay, mirase. Okay, so your GMO greetings, yet I say we thank you, everybody, for joining in. I'm Odwirafo Kwesi Radnembata Akan, Odwirafo of Akwamu Amaruka Tifimu, the Akwamu Nation in North America within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afurite, Kaitnit African people in the Western Hemisphere. So we just wanted to jump back on here and go into some detail about a specific topic. You see that the name of the show for tonight is NEBT Het Akua. This is the female divinity as represented in ancient Khanit and Kemet, Egypt, Nubian Egypt, as NEBT Het, forcing creation, one of the female forces in creation, one of the divinities. She's called Akua or Nana Akua in the Akan language. She's Koni Koni in Ewe in the Vodun tradition. She's Agberu, the Orisha Agberu in the Yoruba tradition and so forth. So we're talking about her in the context of Susuw, in the context of meditation. We say renal system meditation, balancing emotions. She governs the renal system in the body. So the renal system is her physical shrine in the body of Afurakani people, African Black people, and so forth. In a spiritual sense, because of that spiritual, quote unquote, renal system, she governs the balancing of emotions. You can't balance your emotional energetic output without, in a harmonious way, without invoking NEBT Het, or also called Akua. So we want to get into that in some detail and show some comparisons across Afurakani, or African Black cultures to show that it's the same divinity, no matter what, ethnic group on the continent as well as in the Western Hemisphere that we come from. Same divinity, but our capacity, when people are talking about balancing emotions and balancing hormones and so forth, if you're not instinctively or deliberately, consciously or unconsciously invoking NEBT Het, Akua, then you're not able to balance emotions. Clearly, our people are not really in alignment with that because many of us manifest imbalanced emotions at various points, and the decisions that we make and the issues that we have. Imagine if the vast majority of adults in our community were able to balance their emotions, how many conflicts would not manifest, how many proper decisions would not go overlooked and so forth. So balancing emotions, of course, this is something that we teach our young people at the time of, manhood and womanhood training, Oberima, Obaatan training, rites of passage and so forth. So by the time you enter into adulthood, one of the main things you know how to do, not just like you manage your physical health, you manage your spiritual health, you manage your emotional health and so forth. That's a key component of just being an adult, but we don't get that kind of proper instruction because we're not typically rooted in our own culture. So then we end up leaning upon Western notions of what's correct with regard to psychology and so forth, and we get a great deal of misinformation and false guidance. So let's get into the topic. So first, let me switch over. And of course, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room as we get to the question and answer session. Okay. And this is part of our series on Susuw. And when you look on our YouTube page, and we posted these videos on the website as well, the webpage, You'll see we've done a number of broadcasts on Susuw, which is the ancient term for meditation. We are in the midst of teaching the first Meditation Instructor Certification Course. We started a few weeks ago, and it goes until July 9th, but we have a new certification course beginning next Monday on July 1st. And it goes from July 1st through July 22nd, every Monday evening at 8 p.m. So if you would like to join that course and become certified as a meditation instructor, a Susuw instructor, you can register. We still have some spots available, and that begins Monday. And we'll talk about that also at the end of the session tonight. But before we get into the meat of the topic, we're gonna quickly give that proper definition of Susuw, as we've done on some of our other broadcasts. But if you haven't been on, or if you haven't seen them, you want to get that proper definition first. This is one of the first things that we introduce in the course for those who will be, becoming certified as a meditation instructor. And you can go to different businesses and organizations and schools and community centers and cultural organizations and teach, a meditation session for 20, 30 minutes or an hour, and you can get paid for that. This is why we have the certification course. So people pay, $100, $200, $300 for someone to come out and conduct a meditation session with youth or adults in places of employment to enhance productivity, reduce stress, reduce anxiety, and so forth, in schools to enhance learning outcomes and so forth, in community centers or human services agencies to assist people who are, trying to get back on track with their lives and so forth, groups, whether it's drug prevention or, group therapy and so forth. They'll have someone come out and maybe once a week, conduct the meditation session. Your certification will allow you to have that credential so you can go in and get paid for that, conduct that half an hour session and so forth, and impact the community positively as at the same time, engaging in entrepreneurial activity. So one of the first things we teach, we give a proper definition of meditation. Of course, meditation is an English term, but we show the etymological roots of the term and we give the proper definition. So when you look in the language of the Akan people of today's Ghana and Ivory Coast, we show the comparison between the Akan language. There are 26 million plus Akan people in West Africa between Ghana and Ivory Coast, one of the largest ethnic groups on the continent, one of the largest groups from whom we were taken and forced into North America. So there are millions of Black people in North America, as well as in the Caribbean and South America, who are actually ancestrally Akan. Just like many of us are Yoruba, many of us are from the Congo and so forth, many of us are Gola or Kisi and so forth. But we're using the Akan language for two reasons. One, because of the definition. Two, because the Akan language, just like Yoruba and Bakongo and various others, are directly descendant of the language of Kemet, because so it's the same terminology as we show. So as you can see in the Akan language, Susuw is the definition, is the term. First and foremost, it means to measure, to sound, search, or measure the depth of, to calculate the capacity of, then also to think, purpose, to think on, reflect upon, to consider, to meditate, and so forth. So to measure, to take measure, is to reflect upon the self, to take measure of the self, to measure the depth of, to calculate the capacity of the spirit, to see what's going on within you. These thoughts, these intentions that manifest as actions, you're taking measure of those. You're reflecting upon them, you're pondering on them, you're measuring them. That's the term for quote unquote meditation. Susuw, to measure, to reflect upon, and so forth. Then when you look in the language, ancient Khanid and Kemet, the root term su, of course, a measure of length. So the term is reduplicated as Susuw and Akan, but it is a measure. And we're taking stock, we're taking measure of ourselves. We measure our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and place them against the standard, or measure them against the standard of divine order. And if our thoughts and intentions and potential actions are out of harmony or out of alignment with natural order, then we engage the ritual process to realign ourselves, purify ourselves, and get back in alignment with divine order. That's our ancestral culture. So now, and we give this definition so that people, when you mention meditation, people have all kinds of definitions that they've heard, false definitions, misinformation, throughout the course of their lives and so forth. So when they hear the word meditation, they get a number of different answers. But when you give a proper definition, a term, Susuw, an ancient term that predates the Europeans, predates any ritual practices in India and so forth, when you give these ancient terms and then you give the proper definition, that is the only definition that people have. So they won't associate Susuw with a bunch of different forms of misinformation. So we look at the term meditate, the etymological root of the term. When you look to think abstractly, engage in contemplation and all of that, they'll say that the Proto-Indo-European, which is PIE root, med, and med means take appropriate measures. So in Akan, Susuw means to measure. That also means to meditate, to reflect upon. Su in ancient Kemet means to measure. Then they say med, the root of the term meditate, means to take measure. And then we look at the actual origin of the term med. And as you can see in the language of ancient Khanate Kemet, its etymological root is meh. And as you can see, the term meh, they will define it as the cubit, and also meh nsu, the royal cubit. That's an English translation of the ancient Kemetic term meh. That is the central unit of measurement in ancient Kemet, the meh, the measurement. So it's like inches and yards and so forth, and feet are the units of measurement in English. In ancient Kemet, if you're going to build a road, build a temple, build a shrine, build a tomb, build Meru pyramids and so forth, the central unit of measurement is the meh. Later in English, they call it the cubit, but it's the meh. So meh means the central unit of measurement. Meh became corrupted into med in Proto-Indo-European to take appropriate measure and so forth. And that's the root of med, itate, and so forth. So even their terminology is not really their terminology, it's our terminology. Now, and as we said before, when you meditating or contemplating upon, reflecting upon, pondering upon, going internal to take measuring your thoughts and intentions and so forth. As we said before, if you see a leopard, stalking a gazelle, and they're very still and they're focused and they're blocking everything else out and focused on the prey, that's a form of reflecting upon, taking measure of, calculating the capacity of. That is Susuw, that is meditation. When you're reading a book and you're focused and you're pondering upon what you're reading and you're taking that information in and blocking everything else out, you're measuring the depth of something, you're calculating the capacity, you're taking measure of the terms, their definitions, the meanings, and putting them together. You're engaged in meditation. When you fall asleep, you're focused internally, you're measuring thoughts, intentions, conditionings that are manifesting in dreams and so forth. Anytime you're focused and pondering or reflecting upon something or contemplating, that is a form of Susuw. We can meditate just like you can meditate in a secular fashion or a ritual fashion. Just like you can sing in a secular fashion. If you won some money, a large sum of money, you started singing about the money, you're singing in a secular fashion. Or you can engage in ritual song as part of an ancestral religious practice. You can dance because you are happy about some event that took place in a secular fashion. You can also engage in ritual dance to invoke the abosom, the orisha, the vodou, the Ntorot, Ntorot, and so forth. You can meditate in a secular fashion to contemplate and focus on studying something, reading something, measuring something, and so forth. Or you can use the practice of meditation or Susuw in a ritual context. When we're teaching a certification course, we focus on the secular expression, no different than teaching someone Pilates or some form of exercise that benefits them in a tangible way immediately. But if they would like to learn more, then we can teach them, of course, the ritual aspect. Now, so let's switch back. All right. So now that you have that basic foundation, we want to talk about the female divinity NEBT HET, who is also called Akua in the Akan tradition. And let's look at our page. We're going to go through our Akradin Bosom page on our website. And this, by the way, this is one of the images of NEBT HET that I took when I was in Kemet. I conducted a study tour a couple of years ago, took a number of people to Kemet and so forth. And inside one of the temples, one of the tombs in the quote unquote Valley of the Kings in the western bank of Kemet and so forth, the tombs are underground. So you go, a number of feet underground, and they have the underground tombs and so forth. And then you see the various murals and reliefs and so forth of the forces of nature. And this is NEBT HET. This is actually took this picture on my iPhone. All right. So we're going to go to our Akradin Bosom page on our website. And just as a side, these are two of the books that I have published. I published 31 books to date. We have some more books coming out this year. These are two of them, Akradin Bosom Volume 1 and Volume 2. All 31 of our books you can download from our website for free. So, but the Akradin Bosom page, what we have on this page, we're dealing with the forces in nature that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week. So the 7-day week did not originate in ancient Sumer. It didn't originate with Europeans. It didn't originate amongst the fictional group called Hebrews and so forth. We've had the 7-day week for thousands of years before Europeans existed. And in the west of Kemet, in what is now Libya and so forth, Kanu and so forth, the ancient land, which they now call Libya, west of Kemet. And we took this into, north through where now Kanana, which is now called Canaan and Israel and so forth, and Kangi, which is later called Sumer, later the Akkadian Empire and so forth. But prior to that, we brought that 7-day week and that particular calendar from Africa, into the Near East before Europeans existed, before they existed in that region. And we also had along the Hapi Valley, so-called Nile Valley, we also had the calendar with the 10-day week that was specific to the floodplain of ancient Kemet. So we've had both. But the 7-day week deals with the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies and the spiritual forces that animate the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies. So here you see, just as an aside, you see this is a relief from Apet Reset, which is so-called Luxor. So when we visit Luxor on a study tour and so forth, Apet Reset, the southern Apet and so forth, that particular temple, you see this relief. On the right, you see Amen, the divinity Amen, which is the great father of creation. supreme being on the masculine side. And then to the left, you see Amenet, the great mother of creation, on the feminine side. So you have Amen and Amenet, the great father and great mother, and they work together as a divine unit, and that unit is what we call the supreme being. But when we invoke or we pray and so forth, we pray to Amenet and Amen, not just the great God, but also the great goddess. So, but you'll notice in Akan culture, for example, you'll notice that Akan people have what they call dadin, or so-called day names, also called kra din, or soul names. So when you see someone born on Akwesida or Awusida Sunday, the divinity that governs Sunday on the masculine side is Awusi, feminine side is Esi. So you notice that females born on Sunday are Akosua or Esi or Akosua. On the male side, they're Kwesi or Akwesi or Kwasi and so forth. If someone's born on a Friday, Kofi for males, Afua or Afia for females. If a woman is born on Wednesday, a female is born on Wednesday, she's Akua. The male is Kweku. Monday is Kojo for males, Ajua for females. Tuesday is Kwabena for males, Abena for females. Thursday is Yao for males, or Kwao for women. It is Ya or Abba. And then Saturday you have Kwame or Kwamena, but typically Kwame. And then for women it's Ama or Ame Miniwa or Ami and so forth. So we're not just named after the days of the week, we're named after the spiritual forces that animate the solar, lunar, and planetary body that governs that day. And that's what we're laying that foundation just so we can show who's who. So, for example, since I was born on Sunday, which is Awusida, that means it shows the community when I'm born on that particular day. That is the Da, or the day of the divinity Awusi. And so my soul name is Kwa Asi, which is Kwa Awusi or Kwa Asi, servant or subject of the divinity Asi. So Kwa Asi or Kwasi or Kwasi and so forth. I'm a child of the divinity Awusi. I bring that energy into the community. A female born on Sunday is Essi or Akosuya. She's a child of the female divinity Essi, who is called Aset in ancient Kemet, while Awusi is called Asar and so forth. So depending on the day of the week, you're born into the world, that's an indication that you were assigned, your spirit was assigned to a specific divinity before you incarnated in the womb. And since you were assigned to that specific divinity and carry that specific force, if you're assigned to a fiery divinity, you're going to have a fiery energy, and you bring that fiery energy into the community. If you're born on a certain day, that indicates to the community, oh, he was assigned or she was assigned to this specific divinity in the spirit realm, and therefore that divinity made sure you were born on that specific day. So let me switch over. So here we just do a quick little chart to show the correspondences across cultures. And you'll see Sunday is Awusi in Akan. That divinity is Obatala in Yoruba. He's called Dangbe in Vodun. He's called Asar or Asari in ancient Kemet. Ajua is the female Abosom divinity of Joda, Monday, the moon, and so forth. She's called Odua, the wife of Obatala in Yoruba, Odua. She's called Minona in Vodun. She's called Aset in ancient Kemet. And as you go through the different ones, you'll see that Awuku and Akua, that's Eshu, and Agberu in Yoruba, that is Awuku and Akua. In Akan, that's Legba, and Koni Koni in Vodun, that is Set, and NEBT Het in ancient Kemet. So we show the correspondences showing we're talking about the same forces in creation across cultures. Even when we were forced into North America, we continued the same practice. So we have a chart So you have the solar, lunar, planetary bodies, but the spiritual force that animates, just like you're a physical body, but you have a spirit animating your body. The ocean is a physical entity and so forth, but there are spiritual forces that animate the ocean. The earth is a physical entity, but there are spiritual forces that animate this planet. The same with the sun, moon, stars, black substance of space, planets, oceans, rivers, mountains, the core of earth, the mantle and upper crust, and all these different features of creation. Those are the physical shrines of spiritual forces that animate the physical shrines. So the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies, physical shrines of spirit forces, these move in a cyclical manifestation every 7 days. So that natural 7-day cycle governs the natural cycles on Earth, also governs the circadian rhythms of the body. There's a cycle called the circaseptan cycle, which is a 7-day cycle where it's a chronobiological cycle that different changes take place within the body every 7 days and so forth. It's directly in relationship to this 7-day cycle, which is a simple movement of the planet, the sun, moon, and the different planets moving into different positions every 7 days, affecting the planet, affecting the oceans, the rivers, the tides, the atmosphere, and so forth in a measurable fashion, affecting us as well. So we show them on this page. We show their popular statuary in ancient Kemet or murals in ancient Kemet, and titles are Sara Set, Sekhmet Heru Bedeti, NEBT Het, Set, Heru, Nekabet, Wachet, Het Heru, Aminmin. We show their sacred statuary in the Akan tradition, same divinities, same functions in creation, operating through the same solar, lunar, and planetary bodies. Awusi, Ajwa, Abena, Bena, Akua, Awuku, Yao, Abba, Ya, Afi, Aminmin. And we also show their shrines in the body. So, Awusi governs the endocrine system, that regulatory structure in the body. Set, the great mother, governs the reproductive system that is inclusive of the, uterus and birth canal. You see the Sekhmet, the warrioress goddess, the lioness, who's the divine killer. She wages war to kill the enemy and so forth. Her shrine in the body is the lymphatic system, the cells that go out and kill the enemies and so forth to protect you, the law enforcement structure. Bina, who is Heru Bedeti, he's the warrior divinity, wages war with iron. They made statues of iron of him, and his followers were the iron workers in the iron foundry of the sacred city of Mesen in ancient Kemet. And when you look at the shrine and temple of Edfu in Kemet, and they have the entire story of Heru Behudet written on the walls and so forth. And they talk about his followers with their iron spears and lances and so forth. And they have statues of Heru Bedeti in iron. He governs iron, he governs war, he governs the planet. Benna, which is the White Sonara Spring called Mars and so forth. The god of war, fire, hot metal, fire, and so forth. But in Yoruba, he's called Ogun. In Akan, he's called Benna. And he's also the one who governs iron and war. His shrine is the immune system in the body, another warrior structure in the body that goes out and kills the cancer cells and free radicals to defend your body against invasion. So you'll see that Sekhmet and Heru Behudet, they are partners in ancient Kemet in the cosmology. They're called Benna and Abena in Akan. They are partners in Akan and so forth, counterparts. The lymphatic system and the immune system are the shrines of Sekhmet and Heru Bedeti, and they work together to defend the body. Just like in the cosmology, Sekhmet and Heru Behudet, the warrioress and the warrior work together to defend the entire nation. In your body, the lymphatic system and the immune system work together to defend your nation, your body. And then we get to Set and NEBT Het. Set, the communicator, the trickster, but also the communicator. He's called Eshu or Elegba in Yoruba, Elegba in Vodun and so forth. The trickster and the communicator, he's called Kweku Anansi, the trickster and the communicator in Akan and so forth. He governs as we can see, the nervous system, also the planet Aku or Awuku, which is the planet Mercury, the quote-unquote messenger planet. Set governs Mercury in the cosmology of ancient Kemet. This is where they get Mercury from, and Europeans, they stole that when they invaded Kemet and so forth. And they have the messenger with the little wings on his feet and so forth, but they stole that from Set, governing the planet Aku or Mercury. He's the communicator. So the nervous system is the communicative structure that sends the messages to all parts of the body. That is the great communicator. That is his shrine in the body. As Kwaku Anansi, the great spider and so forth, he weaves a web of energy of Tumi that permeates all of creation and sends energy through that web of communication to communicate with all naturally created entities in creation. And then we have NEBT Het, and she governs the renal system. So now we can get into some details about her and what our session is about tonight. Okay, so this is one of the articles. We've published our books parts 1 and 2, and we have some more books coming out on that, but we have an article on each one of these divinities. So this particular image of NEBT Het is from the tomb of Tutankhamen. So when you go to Kemet, you go into the Valley of the Kings, the tombs underground and so forth. All of the other mummies are in the museum in Cairo, but the only mummy that's actually in the tomb in the Valley of the Kings underground is the mummy of Tutankhamen. So when we go to Kemet, you'll see that. But on the walls inside of the tomb, a number of different murals, but this particular image of NEBT Het is from that tomb. And of course, Black female divinity. Of course, when people pretend like the people of ancient Kemet were Arabs or Europeans, that's insane. Now, then we showed NEBT Het Akua. So Akua, as she's called in the Akan language. Hold on 1 second. So she's the Abosom, which is the Akan term for divinity. The Abosom, the deity, the goddess of the Ochin, the planet Akua, which is Mercury. On the feminine side, it's Akua. On the masculine side, it's Awuku or Aku. Her day is Akuada, which is Wednesday. So any female born in Akan tradition is for Black people only, of course, because these divinities, the forces in nature, only possess spirit possession and communicate with our people. So female born on Wednesday or Akuada is a child of this divinity. So she makes sure if you're assigned to her pre-incarnation as an ancestress, being ready to be sent into the womb of one of your descendants so you can be born in the world once again for the first time in a couple hundred years, you're assigned to this female divinity. You carry her energetic signature. So she's going to make sure that you are born on her day, on Akuada, to indicate to the community, oh, this is a child of Nana Akua. Even if there are birth complications, she's still going to make sure, even a cesarean section, she's still going to make sure you come out on Akuada on Wednesday. So she governs the divine renal system, which is the fluid balancing and excretory structure of our body of creation, the great divine body of Inyamewa, the supreme being, and thus the renal system within the Afurakani meaning the African Black body. So just like you have a great body and you have smaller organs that make up your body and so forth, that regulate order in the body of creation is the body of Amen and Amenet. And within their great divine body are smaller organs, which are the deities, and then they give birth to smaller bodies, which are plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, or African human life. So we are the children, just like the cells are children of the organ, and then the organ is the child of the great body. where we are the cells, plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afro-Akanite or African Black human life. We are the cells of the divinities, and we are cells of our parent organs. So just like a liver cell has a parent organ, the liver itself, when it lives in harmony with the liver, its parent organ is serving you, the great being, at the same time. And when the pancreas cell serves as parent organ or parent deity, it's serving you, the great being, at the same time. We are the cells, we are children of one of the divinities and so forth. When we live in harmony with that divinity that governs us, our parent organ or parent divinity, parent Orisha, parent Abosom, parent Vodou, and so forth, we're serving the great being, Amen and Amenet, at the same time. So, someone born on Akua Wednesday, showing that she was assigned to the female divinity Akua, and she is to bring that Akua energy into the community, the communal sphere, to bring that level of energy to heal and do the things that she needs to do in that community. So that's the planet, of course, Akua, which is quote unquote Mercury, which we call Akua. So then we make the comparisons in Yoruba culture that people are familiar with of southwestern Nigeria. She is called Agberu, the Orisha Agberu, the wife of Eshu Alegba. We said in Fong culture and Eve, which is the Vodun tradition, she is called Koni Koni. She's called the Vodou Koni Koni, the wife of Alegba. In ancient Kemet, of course, she is NEBT Het, Ankani, which is Nubian, and so forth. But she's Akua in Akan. So we say one of the titles of Akua in Akan culture, if you look in the Akan language, one of her titles is Kukua. Kukua. So if you ever hear somebody named Akua, you know she's born on Wednesday, Akuada. She's a child of this female divinity, black person, only black women, of course, only. But she's a child of this divinity, Akua, NEBT Het. And sometimes you will hear them use the nickname Kukua as opposed to just Akua. So Kukua is the general term. Kukua means a small earthen vessel. In the Akan tradition, the earthen vessel is the symbol that defines and distinguishes NEBT Het, Akua, from other divinities in Kemet. When you see NEBT Het, you see on her head, you'll see the vessel. She's the only divinity that has that vessel as a headdress. Other female divinities have different forms. Some have the cow's horn. Some of them have, the solar disk or the moon or a vulture headdress, a number of different things. But Akua, or NEBT Het, she is the only one that has the vessel on her head. So even if you just saw an image, before you read the writing, to see who it is, who they're talking about, just by seeing that image of the vessel and the het up under the vessel, you know that is NEBT Het. So then we show the Medutu, the vessel itself is called Neb, feminine Nebet. The term Neb or Nebet means head, chieftainess, mistress, great lady. And then the symbol Het, this little rectangular symbol, means house, sanctuary, temple enclosure. And the little half circle up there is the T sound. So that's NEBT Het and so forth. So she's the mistress or the great divine lady, Nebet, of the temple enclosure or the sanctuary, Het. She is the governess of priestesshood, those who are the link between the physical world and the spirit realm. So here's another image of her with the vessel Nebet and the symbol for the sanctuary Het. So NEBT Het, the great divine lady of the temple enclosure, the sacred sanctuary, and so forth, the head of the sacred house, and so forth. Now, that's important for a couple of reasons. Kukua, meaning the small earthen vessel, being a title of Aku and Akan. it points to the reality that her nickname in Akan, the one of the earthen vessel, Kukua, also defines her actual Medutu or hieroglyphic spelling of her name in ancient Kemet, the one that bears the vessel on her head. She's the divine courieress. So she takes her vessel, she takes the offerings that we give to the ancestral spirits and divinities. So you see someone place an offering, a food offering out and so forth, and giving it to the shrine of a divinity and so forth. She takes the spiritual energy of that offering in her sacred vessel and carries it as a courieress from us to the forces in creation, to the divinities, to the ancestral spirits. And when you give an offering, that's releasing some energy, and it provokes the energy of the individual to dispense their energy to you and so forth as a feedback mechanism. So it's no different than if someone releases, if you have some rock incense, you have particular resins, you have, frankincense and myrrh, which we call, heju, which is the white resin, and antiu is the red resin in the language of ancient Kemet. If you have some rock incense, it's in a bowl or something on a shelf, you can smell the scent a little bit. If you put fire to it, then it activates it and it fills up the entire room with smoke. And if somebody's in the space, that energy will provoke them. It will cause a stimulatory effect upon them when they breathe it in, and it has an effect and so forth. If you give somebody some medicine, it gets into their system and it has an effect, and then there's a response. If you engage in ritual prayer, ritual chant and so forth, the sound vibrations that leave you provokes the energy of the Nsamanfo, the ancestral spirits, the divinities, the Abosom, and then they release a dispensation of energy to you. Even for a child, a baby, when a baby cries, the sound vibrations go to the mother, it stimulates her eardrums, it causes her to respond to that prayer, and then she dispenses milk to the child. So there's a provocation, a release, a prayer, a chant, a ritual song, a cry. The sound vibrations provoke the great being that the baby is quote unquote praying to, and the great being responds by releasing life-giving, life-sustaining energy or milk. So when we engage in ritual prayer, a ritual chant, a ritual song and so forth, or a ritual dance, when we're moving and so forth and releasing energy from our physical and spiritual bodies out to the forces in creation, that energy pushes or provokes them to respond in kind. As long as we're in harmony with order, we're not projecting anything discordant or negative, and they would dispense their energy to us to replenish our energy, empower us to move forward and overcome whatever obstacle we have in our path. And the same thing happens when you have a ritual offering, that you prayed over this ritual offering and empowered it and so forth. You put it forward for divinity or an ancestral spirit. The energy emanating from that provokes the spiritual force of the divinity, and then they respond by releasing their energy to us. So she carries the offering in her spiritual vessel. We give an offering and so forth that's charged with our energy and our petitions and so forth. She carries that in her vessel, to the divinities, and then they respond by responding to us. So that's what we're explaining in that particular section. And that becomes very important with regard to the vessel, especially in the context of the vessel being on the head and carrying some heavy energy, because, we're going to get into emotional balance, and having something heavy on your head and balancing something heavy on your head. And if things become imbalanced, then, things can become a problem. There's a way to rebalance yourself. So we say in Akan, this basket is an earthen vessel called Kukua, which is a title of Akua. And then there's also a term in the Akan language, Akua with two A's, which means a recess in a courtyard, a small courtyard behind a house. When you look at the Het symbol in ancient Kemet, it's the bird's eye view of the temple enclosure. So you're looking kind of like a blueprint. You see the little door entry point here, and then the space of the courtyard, the temple enclosure. So the reason why that's important just expand that a little bit, is because Kukua, meaning vessel, a title of Akua and Akan. Akua, a temple enclosure, a title of Akua and Akan. And we just said she is NEBT Het in ancient Kemet. Well, Neb means the vessel in ancient Kemet, and Het is the temple enclosure. So vessel, temple enclosure, NEBT Het. Vessel, Kukua in Akan, and then temple enclosure, courtyard, Akua in Akan. The name of the divinity describes the vessel and the temple enclosure in the Akan language. The name of the divinity defines the vessel and the temple enclosure in ancient Kemet, proving linguistically and cosmologically that this is the same divinity. Of course, we have experience with this force in creation, so we know who she is, and she communicates with our people, of course, but even linguistically, we have that proof as well. So we show that Neb means cup or basin, Nebet on the feminine side. Neb also means everyone, any, all, each, because when you have a vessel, cosmologically, there's a great calabash of creation and everything exists within that calabash. So Neb, the vessel, also means all and every. So we're just showing that these different terms, you'll find the same terms in our Akan language as well. And we also show the masculine side, Neb, the feminine side, Nebet. So master, owner, possessor. On the male side, Neb, Nebet, master, owner, lady, mistress. Mistress in the sense of masteress, not mistress in the sense of, somebody cheating on somebody, but the female master or owner or possessor, masteress or mistress and so forth. So we go through some of that linguistic information, but now if you look at the terms Kua and Ku in the Akan language, it means to bend, to join, to bring together. Those roots forming the root of the name, Akua and Aku, talking about the links from the spirit realm and so forth. And we talked a little bit about that. So the house or the Het is a ritual space that functions as a sacred gate or portal to the ancestral realm, which we call Asamando and Akan. NEBT Het, the great divine lady or mistress of the enclosure, is the governess of this ritual space and the ritual activity conducted within such a space. Now, let's look at the context of her representation in the Akan tradition as the Akua Ba, the Akua doll. You've seen the fertility dolls before. They're kind of popular, and people say, well, that's just a fertility doll. Of course, it's in the shape of the Ankh because it's the same sacred symbolism that we never stopped utilizing ever since we migrated from ancient Khanid and Kemet, the Hapi Valley, a couple of thousand years ago, relocated to the western part of the continent where Mali is right now. We were there for 1,000 plus years after Muslim invasions. Some of our people, about 1,000 years ago, Muslim invasions, Almoravids and others, some of our people migrated from that region further south to where Ghana and Ivory Coast are today. And then hundreds of years after living in those areas, after reestablishing Akan civilization in the forest belt, some of us were taken from that portion, that region, and forced into North America and Central America and South America and the Caribbean during the enslavement era. And we continued our Akan ancestral religious practice. So here in North America, that practice is called the hoodoo tradition, from the Akan term, undu. So we still use hoodoo doll babies in the same form in North America as Akua dolls in Akan and ancient Ankh symbols in ancient Kemet, because we're the same people. No different than people migrating from Mississippi to Chicago. We migrated from the Hapi Valley to the western part of the continent, but then some of us were taken from there and brought over here. So now, Ba means child. So this little fertility figure is a child, a Ba, of Akua. And they would utilize this particular form. One of the stories is about a woman who wasn't able to get pregnant. She went to a ritual specialist in Okomfo, someone part of the priestesshood and so forth. And they ritually prepared this kind of fertility doll, had the woman tie the doll to her back, just like you would tie a baby to the back and so forth. She's invoking the spirit of the female divinity Akua, who's a mother divinity. And then it stimulated her womb to realign her womb and heal her womb and so forth. And she was able to get pregnant. And even today in Ghana, when someone wants to get pregnant, you'll see them carrying the fertility dolls or the Akuapa around and so forth. Now, one of the root names of the term, the definitions of Kua is plantation or farm or fertile land. So that has to do with the fertility aspect. But you also see, for example, you'll see Anpu, the divinity, placing the Ankh at the nose of the sovereign who is transitioned. That's his spirit and so forth. So it's a funerary function for the Ankh as well. It's a fertility function to stimulate, birth and, smooth out that process. But also when someone transitions, the Ankh is used to enliven the spirit and embolden the spirit. So it's a strong spirit so it can move to the ancestral realm without being pulled in negative directions by wayward spirits that will pull them away from the powerful ancestral community. So there's a funerary function as well. And you'll see in ancient Kemet, in the Akan tradition, you'll see the fertility aspect of Akua. But then there's a form of the Akua structure, which is this one, as you can see, which is used in funerals and in cemeteries. And these are the funerary Akua sculptures. And they're in the same form as the NEBT HET symbol on her head. So there's a funerary function and a fertility function. And so we show that combination. Then we'll show very often when you turn an Akua doll around and you see the back of the head, you'll see the Jed pillar on the back of the head and so forth. We've been using the same symbolism unbroken. All right. And just to give some further definition, very often people see an Ankh in Kemet as a talisman structure. They're unaware that there are Ankhs with arms and hands and so forth, just like the Akua dolls, because it's the same ancient symbol. And Ankhet, the living one, the name of a goddess, that is Akuaba, that is a symbol for NEBT HET, the Akua. That's her ancient title. So we just need to show that this is the continuity of culture. So we give some of those definitions. We said that in the Yoruba tradition, her name is Agberu. Agberu in the Yoruba language literally means the load bearer. These are some Yoruba women in ritual. You see they have the vessels with the sacred offerings on the head and so forth. They are bearing the load. Agberu means the load bearer. She is the wife of Eshu, the trickster. She is NEBT HET in ancient Kemet. She's the load bearer in ancient Kemet. She's Akua, the one with the kukua, the earthen vessel on her head in Akan. She's Agberu, the load bearer in Yoruba. Just to show that that's the same divinity with the same titles in the various languages, pointing to the same specific function in creation. Now, we show some of her titles in the Akan language and ancient Kemet there as well. Now, so now that you know, and let's see, hold on one second. Let me pull up this. Pull up one of these images that we posted a while back. This is something that we posted every now and then. We'll repost it on Facebook. Hold on a second. Just going to screenshot it real quick just so you can see that. And of course, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room and we'll address those. I just want you to see this screenshot. This is something that we posted just to give people a quote unquote contemporary expression or representation of this divinity and her natural function. So you see the Fulani woman carrying the great vessel and the little post here to hold the vessel up. But this is that ancient function of Akua. Now, of course, you're going to take you have this great vessel carrying something of substance, something to feed and purify and cleanse, whether it's food or medicine or sacred water to purify. Food is strengthening. Food is purificatory. Medicine is strengthening. Medicine is purificatory. Water is cleansing and so forth, purificatory and so forth. So whatever's in that vessel, strengthening, but also healing and purifying. And in the spiritual sense, she carries the ritual invocations, the ritual prayers from us to the Abosom and Nsamafo, the deities and ancestral spirits, for ritual invocation, and it's purificatory and it's strengthening, cleansing, and so forth. Now, let's get to, let me switch back over. Now, we're going to go back up because we were talking about her physiological shrine in the body. We showed the vessels. We gave the definitions. So, we said that she is the NEBT, the masteress or mistress or great lady NEBT of the Het, of the house, the sanctuary, the sacred temple enclosure, and so forth. So we say within our Ochim planet, the Het or house is the sky, which is the gateway, the link between the physical and non-physical realms. So she's the gateway. She's the courieress going from earth to the heavenly realm, spirit realm, carrying our prayers back and forth to the physical realm, to the spirit realm. She's the link, ku, meaning link to join and so forth. On earth, the physical space, this atmosphere and so forth surrounding earth. Between the earth, you have the atmosphere, and then the black substance of space where all the suns, moons, stars, planets, and these sacred powers, forces are dwelling. And the go-between space is the atmosphere. And so the Het, or the house, is the sky, which is the gateway, the link between the physical and spiritual or non-physical blackness of space. The clouds are the Kukua, which are vessels in the sky. The Nebet, or the vessels in the sky that contain ritual offerings. When the clouds become full and dark, they offer rainwater to nourish and cleanse. So the cloud is a vessel. When it gets filled up with quote unquote water, then it drops the water and purifies and cleanses the area and replenishes streams and so forth and carries energy and so forth. It's a powerful happening. Now, the clouds are the vessels. They are the kukua. They release the rainwater to nourish and cleanse. NEBT Het is called the nurse mother or wet nurse of Heru. while Aset is the birth mother of Heru. So sometimes you'll see that we have wet nurses and so forth that nurse the children and so forth. NEBT Het is the wet nurse and so forth. Now, NEBT Het is recognized to govern the rain waters of earth and the dew of Asase Afua. So the morning dew and so forth, the water that manifests, also the rain waters. NEBT Het governs the rain waters. Now, that's one reason, one of her praise names. She has a few praise names, Obisi, Susuw, Ekuse, and so forth. They reference the thick, dark, cloudy, dusky clouds that are full of rain that are about to release the water and so forth, all these different things. Now, let's switch over real quick. And we also say, of course, rainwater fills the space of the sky, droplets become couriers of messages, energy from heaven to earth, and so forth. Now, rainwater is a redistribution of resources on earth. The dry areas that are not close to the lakes and streams, rivers and oceans, derive a great benefit from this redistribution. So she's redistributing, and our livelihood and existence is dependent on her redistributing. If you're living in a desert region, you're dependent on rains happening somewhere that's going to redistribute the water. The water from the ocean, evaporation takes place, condensation collects in the clouds, and then it's redistributed billions of raindrops somewhere else where the earth is dry. So the water from the oceans, rivers, streams, ponds, lakes, and so forth can be redistributed, and she does that. Now, the same function is executed by NEBT Het within the Afurakani body as she functions through the renal system. The renal system, whose major organ is the kidneys. The kidneys, ureters, and bladder, and so forth, that is the renal system. It's the fluid balancing system in the body. It's the mineral balancing system in the body. If you didn't have a renal system, then your ankles and hands and everything would swell up with fluid because it's not being properly balanced and so forth. It's not redistributing the water properly. If you didn't have a properly functioning renal system, kidneys, then the mineral balance, electrolyte balance, or mineral balance in your body would be off, and you have all kinds of illnesses and so forth, including kidney stones and other different kinds of things. But it properly balances out the minerals in the body, just like it balances out the water. So, same thing she does on earth, redistributing water and resources and so forth. She's doing the same thing with the vessels in the body. The kidney is the vessel and releases the water and rebalances. So, hold on a second. So we say the renal system not only functions as an excretory system and detoxifier of the blood, but also the system which regulates electrolyte balance, which is mineral balance and fluid balance, water balance in the body, including the regulation of blood pressure. The regulation of fluid balance and electrolyte balance is nourishing, while the excretion of waste and detoxification of the blood is restorative. These functions reflect the fertility and funerary functions of NEBT Het. So you need something to detoxify. That's a healeress. When you go to a healeress, a priestess, and so forth, and they make certain herbs for you to purify you, and also detoxify, get certain individuals or circumstances out of your life, engaging in ritual to do so. No different than when you take medicine to purify the blood and so forth. The kidneys, the renal system detoxifies, purifies, eliminates, or excretes waste, but it also has the fluid balancing, water balancing, fertility function. So, and then we just show the images of, the kidneys and the, representative of the vessel and the het symbol. And even when you look, in this region, the big nebulous clouds, the black clouds, the dark clouds, and so forth, the Odwirafo, the ekuse, as we call in Akan, you know the water is about to fall. You know it's about to be an abundance of rain. That means it's going to be purification, redistribution, and so forth. And things are going to be, back to normal. We're looking forward to the rains. Now, so we show that representation. The kidney is the vessel and all that. And we also show, in the Akan tradition, the Adinkra symbol, Bribi, Wosoro. And it means Nyamewa, or Nyame, the great supreme being. There is something in the heavens, let it reach me. That is the sacred symbol, Adinkra symbol. And of course, it is in the form of the two kidneys and so forth. There's something in the heavens, let it reach me. Release it and let it reach me. What's in the heavens, even physically? Those nebulous clouds of NEBT HET. And when she releases that rainwater, it's going to purify. We even capture rainwater in the Hoodoo tradition, not only for purification, but also for divination as well when we engage in water divination. So that sacred rainwater is important as well. Now, NEBT HET is referred to as a funerary divinity. Hold on a second. She is a protectress of the individual who transitions from the physical world to Asamindo, which is the ancestral realm. Just as she protected Awusi Alsar, it's to NEBT HET that we look for protection, nourishment, and strength so that the deceased spirit makes a harmonious transition to Asamando without becoming earthbound, trapped in between worlds and subject to the attacks from other discarnate earthbound spirits. Her function as a protectress of the individual deceased spirit, Osamine, also lends itself to her titles in Akan, Obisi, Obrisuo, Ekuse, and so forth, referencing the dark, dusk, cloudy, and so forth. So when someone transitions, she's a courieress. She assists the individual. So just like if you were on a mundane level, if you were walking, or if your child is going to school or going to the store or something, and they have a destination. They're at the home, they're going to go to school, or at home and going to a store. They have to walk through the neighborhood or walk down the block or whatever. On the way, there can be some people who are drug addicts or somebody who thieves and so forth to try to lure them away from their path and get them to go in a different direction to do drugs or steal something or whatever it is. But they want to stay on that proper path to get to their destination, get what they need to get, and get back to their original location. They don't want to be led away. When someone transitions, when their spirit separates from the body and the body is buried after the funeral and so forth, and a spirit is making their journey to the realm of the ancestresses and ancestors, that region where the pristine community up in Samafo ancestral spirits are dwelling. On their way, there are certain spirits who are not allowed to live with the larger group of pristine ancestresses and ancestors. Just like on Earth, if you had a cousin who was a thief or a crackhead and would break in people's houses and so forth, if you're having a family reunion and he shows up at the door, he's not going to be let in. He can't dwell in the community of the people who are operating normally because we know disorder is going to manifest, so he can't get in. If he tried to force himself in, he's going to get beat down and so forth. So he's left out. In the same fashion, when some people are spiritually discordant throughout their lives as adults, when they transition, they are repelled from the larger community of the ancestresses and ancestors, and they are earthbound. They're hanging around the spot where they were murdered, the spot where they died, the spot where they were in the hospital, or certain other places that they frequented. They're earthbound spirits. They're not allowed to get to the, positive, powerful community of ancestral spirits. If they try to move in that direction, they get repelled, just like if you have two magnets with the same, polarity facing on a table, they will push the other one away even before they get a chance to touch. If you're operating in a frequency of discordant energy, you get repelled. So they're earthbound. They're hanging around. They're suffering, just like a homeless person who's, doesn't have a home. They're sitting near a bridge, or they're sitting by a building. Every time you walk by, they may ask for money, or they may lash out and yell and scream and so forth. And they may be doing that for years because they're out of order. When someone like that transitions, spirit is earthbound, discordant. So you have a number of people who are earthbound spirits and are suffering in the spirit realm for decades before they reincarnate. And when somebody transitions, when they're making their way to the ancestral realm, they can encounter these individuals who would try to pull them away from making that proper journey. Just like when they were alive on earth, some of those people try to pull you off the path and make, hey, you want to go smoke this? Hey, you want to do this? Or try to rob you or do whatever. NEBT HET, when we invoke her, part of her role in the funerary capacity is a protection for the deceased spirit, so they can make that journey easily directly to the ancestral community without being pulled in different directions. So that's what we're talking about in that particular section. Even in the pyramid text, earliest religious text in existence, there's a section that says ascend and ascend, ascend and descend, descend with the NEBT HET, sink into darkness with the night boat, ascend and descend, ascend with Aset, rise with the day boat. And what that text is referencing, when you see the boat of Ra sailing across the sky with the solar disk in the boat and so forth from sunrise to sunset, and he's sailing across the sky and so forth. Let's just show a quick image of that. Hold on one second. We have that. In our book, Afuraka, The Origin of the Term Africa. Let me just pull that up real quick. Okay, so when you see, this is one of the 31 books we've published. You can download this book for free, showing that the term Africa comes from Afuraka. We show it in the hieroglyphs, the Medutu, and so forth. So you see the boat of Ra, the creator of the universe, with the disk of the Aten, the sun. So the sun rises in the east and sails across the sky in the great boat and sets in the west. Set is in the day boat, but when the boat sets in the west and then they change boats and go into the underworld for the 12 hours of the night, and Ra changes from a falcon-headed divinity to a flat-horn ram divinity, and he's called Afura. NEBT HET is in the night boat and so forth, going into the underworld, the spirit realm, and she's a guide and so forth. As a courieress, this is what that text is talking about. All right. All right, so that's what they're referencing. She takes the boat of the underworld after sunset, and of course that's the time of the darkness and the ancestral realm and so forth. Now we can get back to this portion here. Okay, so this is NEBT HET, and of course you see her symbol NEBT, and then HET, the vessel is NEBT, and the rectangular sanctuary is HET. You see her in that kneeling posture with her hands over the heart and so forth. So when we're talking about the renal system rebalancing the fluid system in the body, the water, fluid balancing system, the water in the body, balancing the water, Water is associated with emotions and so forth, balancing the mineral life, the electrolyte balance in the body and so forth. Also detoxifying, purifying the blood, excreting waste. So in your spirit body, if you're excreting waste, you're invoking NEBT HET. Through meditation, you invoke NEBT HET so you can excrete waste. She's the force, just like in your body. You make sure you have certain herbs and foods so your kidneys and your renal system is working properly so you can excrete waste properly and also detoxify the blood. So you make sure you have the right foods and herbs and get enough sleep and exercise so it can work properly. For your spirit body, you want to be in alignment with NEBT HET, invoking her through ritual prayer, meditation, chant, and so forth, so that in your spirit body you can excrete spiritual debris or excrete waste as well, so it doesn't cause problems for you. Now, and the same thing with detoxifying, but also the fluid balancing, mineral balancing aspect in the body. So what does the text, our article, have to say about that? Hold on one second. Now, those who are children of Akua especially, but then us in general, must recognize the value of effective ritual. She governs the ritual enclosure, which encompasses the independence of our proper functioning in the physical world and our need for nourishment and detoxification protection received from the Abosom and Nananom and Samanfo, the deities, and spiritually cultivated ancestral spirits, ancestresses and ancestors in the spirit realm. So, we say those who have the Akradin or soul names Akua, and on the masculine side, Kweku, carry the energy of Nana Akua and have the capacity to participate in the regulation of divine ritual offering to Nyamewa Nyame, the Abosom and Nsamanfo, the Supreme Being, the deities, honorable ancestral spirits, in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. Yet people that also have the capacity to engage in corrupt ritual and create disorder. So you have to be mindful of that. And the way you, override that is to align your thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. That's our culture. Now, let me go down a little bit. So we say the embrace of misguided ritual leads to corruption of true religion, ancestral religion, and to the birth of pseudo-religion, pseudo-philosophy, pseudo-priesthood, charlatanism, all of that. Now, when it comes to the notion of emotions, as the Abosom, who is the divine courieress, bearing a load on her head, Akua is governess of our emotions. So now you need to think about, and then you look at this image once again, and you've done this before yourself at some point. Now, if you look at that, even if you fill up a vessel of water all the way to the top, and then you start walking, if you're not very careful, if you don't, walk very carefully and place your steps properly, the water starts swishing and swashing and so forth. You have to be very balanced and focused to be able to carry the water and keep it still without it spilling, without it beginning to rock and so forth. And that's just carrying it in front of you. Imagine carrying, a vessel on your head like the sister here, full of water, and they will go all the way down to the river, fill up their vessel of water, place it on the head, and walk all the way back through the woods and so forth to get back to the village with the water without spilling the water. Balancing that load on the head. When it's perfectly balanced, it's not heavy, it's just balanced and it's there. But when you start swaying from one side to the other, then the water starts going back and forth. You can lose it, of course, lose the thing that's going to nourish you, replenish you, detoxify you and so forth, and balance you out. You can lose it if you're not balanced. It becomes heavy and so forth. So When you have something heavy on your head and you're not balanced, then it causes all kinds of problems. Now, and that's what part of the symbolism is pointing toward. Now, she has the great load on her head. She's the governess of our emotions, what we have that we carry on our heads. As we nourish ourselves, nutrients are distributed throughout our bodies based on the need of our organs and organ systems. The renal system, governed by Akua, filters our body, maintains fluid balance. As we absorb energy streaming into us from creation, our body, harmonious energetic emanations are distributed throughout our spirit bodies based on the need of our spiritual organs and organ systems. Akua, NEBT HET, filters our spirit body and maintains spiritual fluid balance by excreting perverse, disharmonious, disordered vibrations and projections from disordered entities. This spiritual fluid balance is our emotional balance. Our emotional state is a reflection of our own spirit's energetic emanations interacting with, internalizing, and or rejecting the energetic emanations of entities of within our body of creation. So, of course, just like when you go outside, you have energy coming from the sun, as well as the moon and other planets. We know the moon has the effect causing the rise and fall of the tides and so forth. It's gravitational pull. It pulls on our 70+% water. Our bodies are 70+% water, just like the earth. So it can cause our tides to rise, meaning we retain more water and we become more emotional and so forth. We're impacted by the energy of plant life, animal life, mineral life, the earth mother, and so forth. We're impacted by all these different, created entities and the energy emanating from them, whether it's the energy of an animal, the smell of, a rose and so forth, the jet stream moving around the earth and so forth, the magnetic field of earth. We're impacted by all these things. We absorb that, and our body filters these things out, just like when we take in all kinds of food, gets in the system, but the renal system filters everything out, detoxifies, excretes waste, balances, fluid balance and everything else. Spiritually, just like physically, we absorb the energy of what's happening on earth. Spiritually, when we come in contact with individuals, their thought projections, their spirit projections projected towards us, we absorb that. Just like we go outside and whatever is, if something's burning and we're breathing, we absorb that in, but our system filters out the toxins. If we hear something, we hear the sounds, based on what's going on, we filter out what we need to filter out, we pay attention to what we need to pay attention to, and so forth. When we come in contact with individuals, physical and spiritual, living individuals or, deceased spirits who are hanging around, their projections, energetic projections hit us, we absorb them, but our spiritual renal system, which is NEBT HET, she filters out the projections from other individuals, ancestors, ancestresses, as well as spirits who are not related to us, who are hanging around. She repels, rejects. That's what your renal system, your spiritual renal system does. It works in that fashion, just like your physical renal system. You don't have to think about your kidneys, filtering things out. They do that because that's what they're designed to do. Your spiritual renal system, the shrine of NEBT HET in your body, it naturally and automatically filters out and rejects and repels negative spiritual projections that we absorb, filters that out, and maintains the spiritual balance, of the energetic projections that we need. So you have a spiritual fluid balance. And when you reject and excrete the spiritual waste, and you're not influenced negatively by other individuals or entities, and you take in the things you need to take in, then you have a spiritual fluid balance that's reflective of divine order. But if you're overrun by certain things, or you're not purifying, or you're not excreting properly, then you get overabsorbed by other people's projections. They trigger conditionings within you that have been unresolved, and then you have a imbalanced spiritual fluid within your body. Now, hold on one second. So I just want to make sure you didn't. Okay, so that spiritual fluid balance is our emotional balance, as we say. And the emotional state is a reflection of our own spirit's energetic emanations interacting with, internalizing, and or rejecting the energetic emanations of entities in and within our body. So, hold on a second. So, of course, we have other people, you have your own energy, your own thoughts, your own intentions that lead to your own actions and so forth. Then you also have other people's stuff coming in as well. Just like you walk through the world physically and so forth, you operate upon your own energy, but you're impacted by other things as well. So the balance between your own energetic emanations and the things that you're absorbing, that's your emotional state. If you absorb things and reject and filter out what you don't need and retain what you do need, just like when you eat food, you take the nutrients and so forth, but you excrete the waste. But if somehow your body doesn't excrete the waste and the toxins, and those just remain in your system, your body is filled up with waste and toxins and so forth, then you become ill. So you need to repair your organs and, get your immune system back in order. Same thing spiritually. Your spiritual immune system needs to be back in order. Your renal system spiritually needs to be back in order. So your own energy based on the energy that's coming, from outside to you, that interplay between that expansion and contraction manifests as your emotional state. Hold on a second. Okay. And then we say the absorption of perverse, disharmonious energetic emanations from disordered entities, physical and non-physical, leads to the perversion of our perception. We have not filtered properly because we have not rejected disorder. Thus, our kukua, or our basin, becomes a heavy load upon in our heads. This is the manifestation of emotional imbalance, corrupted energy and perceptions resulting from emotional imbalance then animates a disordered practice of ritual offering. So, hold on a second. So again, we need to, just like physically, you need to make sure your renal system is working. You take certain herbs to do that and engage in lifestyles that, a lifestyle that promotes health in that area. The same thing spiritually, because if we absorb perverse, disharmonious, energetic emanations and we take that to heart, then our vessel becomes full of toxins, it becomes heavy, we become imbalanced, and it manifests as emotional imbalance. And one of the ways that we overcome that is by invoking the divinity that governs emotional balance, invoking the divinity that governs the load that we carry on our heads. White Western psychology can't teach you how to invoke the actual divinity that governs the force of energy that you hold on your head. Dealing with ancestral religion, whether you do it consciously because you've been studying and then you engage in ritual practice to invoke this divinity deliberately, or intuitively, instinctively, you find yourself in that way where you're just led instinctively to engage in certain forms of meditation or certain forms of ritual, and you end up, invoking this divinity instinctively. That's the only way, in the true sense, to address emotional balance or imbalance. You deal with the divinity that actually governs it. It's like if you have an issue, and it's diagnosed and it turns out that there's a problem with the liver or a problem with the spleen or problem with the kidneys and so forth, and you take the specific herbs to address that specific organ so it can get back to its proper functioning. You go to the entity that governs the issue. The whites and offspring don't know anything about these forces in creation that govern these issues. So they're going to sit there and talk to you, engage you in talk therapy and, cognitive therapy and so forth. And if your behavior doesn't change or it's not masked, then they're going to, prescribe some medication that's going to cause even more problems for you. And you'll be going back and forth to therapy for weeks, months, years, sometimes wasting your time, as opposed to invoking the actual divinity who has a shrine in your body and invoking her fully, aligning with her energy and so forth, following that direction and eradicating that imbalance within your system. And this has always been part of our ancestral religious practice for thousands of years up to this very moment. So, and once again, she has her shrine in your body is the renal system. She has her own name in the various Afurakani cultures across the continent, wherever we exist in the world. So this is part and parcel of our culture. All right, let me just and the final piece there, we just say the major dilemma that children of Akua face when they are out of harmony with her energy, and us in general, not just people who are children of Akua born on Akua Wednesday, but us in general, is manifesting emotional imbalance, which leads to rationalizing the ritualization of disorder. So, and thus the most extreme and perverse ritual practices without regard for their disastrous consequences, pollution of their spirits, perpetuation of disorder, and so forth. So you can get into the position where she governs, ritual and so forth. She's the governess of ritual. You get out of harmony with the one who governs ritual, and then you start rationalizing the ritualization of disorder as opposed to ritualizing getting in harmony with divine order. You start engaging in disordered, imbalanced behavior and disorder, and then you begin to rationalize that, which therefore perpetuates that instead of perpetuating the kind of behavior and ritual that will bring order back into the community and yourself. And so you create more disorder within the community, because if you're engaged in certain ritual and it's disorder and it's creating disorder, and then you rationalize that and convince others, then they start participating in that. That's no different than someone going from eating, clean food, organic food and so forth. And someone said, well, why don't you try this new substance called cocaine or something else? And people are like, oh, maybe we need to try that. And then they begin to rationalize the disorder. And the next thing you know, you have, thousands and thousands of people who are addicted to drugs and self-destructive and creating all kinds of disorder within the community in various different facets. So if you get out of harmony with this force in creation, then there, depending on what divinity you get out of harmony with, there's a certain expression of disorder that manifests. So just like if you're, if there's a problem with the kidneys and the fluid balancing system, the way it manifests very often is swollen ankles, swollen wrists, swollen parts of the body, and so forth. Well, if you get out of harmony with, the divinity that governs the nervous system, Kweku Anansi, Awuku, Aku, Eshu, Legba, and so forth, it may manifest as, certain motor, derangement and so forth. Movements are limited, pain in the, parts of the body, the nervous system is disrupted. So depending on the mode of disorder, the region of the body or the aspect of the body that you've gotten out of harmony with or out of alignment with, there's a specific expression of that disorder in that part of the physical body. When you get out of harmony with the divinity of force in creation, depending on the nature of that divinity and their role in creation, there's a specific expression of disorder that manifests, that when people see it, they're like, oh, they're acting this way, they must be out of harmony with Akua. Oh, he's acting this way, he must be out of harmony with Awusi. Oh, he's acting this way, he must be out of harmony with the deity Bena, and so forth. So, okay. So that's the information we want to share with everybody tonight. I'm going to check to see if we have any questions in the chat room. If you have any questions, of course, you can post them. Okay, so I've listened to information about law of attraction and manifesting. I am trying to reconcile ancestral religion with it. They teach recognizing the God power within you and so on. That's because they don't know who the deities actually are. So just saying the God power within you that doesn't mean anything. People are children. The whites and offspring are not children of any divinity, so they can't speak on that. We are children of different forces in creation. Some people are children of a watery divinity. Some people are children of fiery divinity. Just like some of your cells are children of the heart organ, a heart deity. Your spleen cells are children of the spleen deity. They have their own function. The liver cells are children of the liver deity. They have their own function. The pancreas cells are children of the pancreas deity or organ. They have their own function. And when they execute their function within their organ, their parent organ, they serve you, the great being, at the same time. So we are children of different forces in creation. We're designed to bring specific energy complexes into our community based on the divinity we are a child of. So when we know who that is, we operate in life accordingly. Our ritual song, ritual chant, ritual prayer, ritual meditation are in alignment with that force in creation. We stimulate that divinity's energy. We utilize it to execute our function in creation, as well as heal ourselves, purify ourselves, realign ourselves when we're out of order. And when we engage in that kind of ritual practice, when we invoke the forces in nature, evoke our ancestresses and ancestors who carry that energy in our clans, that's when you start, quote unquote, manifesting or magnetizing the kind of resources you need to you, because you're living in harmony with the order that you were placed in, that you were born in. Outside of that, when they just talk about magnetism and trying to influence people here and there are a lot of steps that they're missing, because number one, they can't communicate with any divinity. So they rely on, things like, if you have a crackhead who you give them a little money and they'll go steal something for you and bring it back to you, or you give them a little money or some drugs and they'll go listen in on somebody and tell you what the person said when they were on the phone and come back and so forth. When a discarnate spirit of somebody who was like that transitions and they're still a wayward spirit, you sacrifice something for them or give them a little offering in that spirit, and you direct them to go listen to somebody, or go to somebody's house and listen in when they're, speaking to somebody. This is what some unscrupulous people do, who are engaged in certain ritual work, and that spirit comes back and informs the person. And then the other individual later comes back and says, hey, I was talking on the phone the other day. And then you can tell them, oh, I know what you were saying. You were saying this, and that. And they'll think that you have some spiritual power, and you don't have any. You just direct, just like you can direct somebody physically to go stand by the door and listen and come back and tell you what happened. And you didn't have any spiritual power. You just told somebody to criminally eavesdrop on somebody. If that person transitions and they're a spirit and you're a little bit receptive, and you told that spirit, I'll sacrifice an animal for you and release that energy for you so you can drink from it, like no different than crack, a little burst of energy that happens when you kill an animal and release that energy. You're like, I'll kill an animal for you, release that energy so you can feed off of that for a few minutes. I'll do that for you. I'll give you that spiritual crack if you go and listen to this person spiritually and come back and tell me. And they do it, and then, you sacrifice the animal for them. And then when that person who's on the phone comes to you and says, hey, I had this conversation, and you repeat it before they can say it, they're like, wow, he's a powerful priest. I need to give him some money. He knows the ins and outs of the spirit world. And really, they don't. So some people, they'll tell you to manifest and do this and do that. You have some deceased relatives who are watching what you're doing, and they'll go and try to influence somebody to do something for you. So if you really want a loan for a house or a car, and you go into the loan office after talking about manifesting, you go to the loan office and your deceased relative is there, and they whisper in the ear of the loan officer, say yes, say yes, say yes. And the loan officer's like, normally I wouldn't do this, but I just get the feeling I should go ahead and let you have it. And they approve the loan. You didn't tap into any divine power. That's no different than if your relative was sitting there speaking physically to the person and they decided to listen to your relative and, go ahead and approve the loan. But since that individual is a spirit, a deceased spirit, they think these thoughts are their own and they go ahead and give it to you. You haven't tapped into any divine spiritual power. You haven't tapped into any divinity. You haven't tapped into anything. That's what they're really doing. They're talking about focusing and manifesting, and they're telling you all these rules, but they're really not tapping into anything. A discarnate spirit of a relative or a non-relative that may or may not help somebody out if they feel like it. They may feel like it, they may not. A homeless person may feel like helping you do something, or they may not that day. A discarnate spirit may decide to help you one time and put a bug in somebody's ear to help you do something, or the next day they may decide, I don't want to do that. So when they do it, then you say, look at the power of manifestation. I focused on it and it worked. And when they don't do it, you say, oh, I was just manifesting wrong. I got to do the ritual over again. So they're really not telling people what's really happening. So, okay. But within our own culture, we have the keys to that. When we invoke the spirit of the Ba or Ba'at, that divine living energy that comes from Ra and Ra, the Creator and Creatress and so forth, that's the energy that builds a bridge to the forces in nature. Spirit possession happens, spirit communication happens. We get a dispensation from them, replenish our own energy, spiritual energy in our bodies and so forth, and then we can make things happen that are in harmony with divine order. We don't manifest things that are out of harmony with order, then you're not getting any assistance from any honored ancestor or ancestress when you're trying to engage in disorder. Then you're just operating on your own, or you're working with discarnate spirits who are wayward and destructive, like cancerous cells. Okay. So the question about the Okra. So yes, the Okra has the blueprint of everything you need to engage in life. And the Okra is the soul, the divine consciousness, the divinity in the head region. Your blueprint is there, just like your brain. Your brain has the blueprint of everything that should happen in your physical body. The Okra, the Ka, the soul, divine consciousness, the Ka has the blueprint of everything that should happen within your spirit body and your life and so forth. When you live in harmony with that, then you make the right decisions. If you get out of harmony with that and you seek, some assistance spiritually, all that the ancestresses and ancestors and the divinities will do is assist you into realigning with the divinity that governs your head. So that's what that is. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, in the book dealing with the Akradin Bosom on Awusi, that's in the first part of the section. Near the end, you'll see, you asked about the qualities should children of Al-Sar be aware of. You'll see that in that section. Akradin Bosom, actually it's volume 2, but in section 1, you'll find those qualities in there about, specifically related to Al-Sar Awusi. The question, is it true that the vast majority of traditions that the day of the week you are born indicates your spiritual assignment? For example, Abatala governs Sundays and Yoruba, Awusi does in Akan. It's different. So some groups don't have that specific structure. Some do. They have different ways of finding out, what divinity governs the head. Some have that specific agreement or arrangement with the Abosom, and some have a different arrangement. In the Igbo tradition, they have a 4-day week, and they have Arusi, which is their term for deities who are associated with the weeks, the 4 days of the week and so forth. But every group doesn't have the same thing. They have different ways to find out what divinity governs the head. The Akan and a couple other groups, based on their structures, have that, but some groups have a 6-day week that they focus on, some a 4-day week, Akan a 7-day week. They have different structures based on their needs. So it just depends on the culture. Okay, question, does Set govern droughts? He can govern that as well as as well as, and when we talk about the red earth, that means like the red clay of Georgia and the red clay of Alabama and so forth, but also deserts in the extreme. That's also red earth as well. So, but when it comes to deserts, yes, he can deal with drought, but then there's also Sekhmet when she gets fired up and so forth and wages war, and they can use, the drought as well. And Ptah and Sekhmet operating at the core of Earth can deal with droughts as well because they have that fiery energy. So there's more than one divinity associated with the droughts, but that can be a weapon as well. You read stories in Kemet about when they're waging war against the enemy who's invading, and they'll use droughts to attack. So, okay, Yenny, I said that you're welcome. I saw that you said I appreciate the response. Okay, no problem. Okay, and we also want to show this. Let me switch this over right quick. Hold on one second. I had to switch it. Now, part of that process is what we talked about in the onset of the session tonight, which of course is Susuw, which is meditation. So through Susuw, the practice of Susuw or meditation, which we teach that in our class, and of course we have our upcoming Susuw meditation instructor course. So you can get certified as a meditation instructor, and then you can utilize that certification to go, as we said earlier, to schools or community centers or places of employment and, conduct meditation sessions. And as we said before, typically people, pay $100, $200, $300 for someone to come out. They'll ask you, hey, can you do a 30-minute meditation session in our seminar for our employees? We want to enhance our productivity, or we want to reduce stress, reduce anxiety, or assist with weight loss. Or you go to a human services organization where it's a women's shelter, and they have a group where they talk about their issues, and they're trying to, get housing or get, different services, or, move into a different place and so forth. And they bring somebody out once a week to do a meditative session to reduce anxiety, reduce stress, be more focused, all these kinds of things. Or going into schools, whether it's elementary schools or high schools or colleges, and they'll pay you to come out once a day or once a week or once a month or periodically and so forth to assist students with enhancing learning outcomes. Or some community organizations, they want this they may have you come out once a week. Say, I'll pay you $200 a week just to come out and do a half an hour session every Friday. So, but typically they want a credential, and a certification is that credential, and this is why we put it forward. So our course, the next course begins this coming Monday. We're in the midst of one course now. The next course, certification course, begins Monday and it's Monday nights, 8 p.m. You can sign up now. There's a deposit option if you want to pay 50% down to register to reserve your spot. We have a few spots still available. And then you can pay the other balance next week or the week after. All of that information is on the Susuw page. And what we talked about last night also, if you like to receive a referral fee, you can receive a $100 referral fee just by recommending the course, the certification course, to someone. If they register, then you get that $100 referral fee. So I'll show you the image for that, which we shared last night. And we did a presentation on that last night to give the details for that last night, but let me just show you that information. All right. Okay, so as you can see, so our certification course is $399. It's basically $99 per week. And at the end, of course, you get the certification and you use that for employment for yourself. You can create your own business, entrepreneur. You can set up, we show you how to set up these kind of contractual arrangements where you can use that certification to, as we said, go into schools, community centers, places of employment, and so forth, to generate income for yourself, just to teach a half-an-hour session. And some people do it full time. They will create a full-time job. Simply, they'll have a school on a Monday. They'll have a business on a Tuesday. They have a community center on a Wednesday, a women's shelter on a Thursday, another school on a Friday. And, they work 40 minutes or an hour per day, $100 or $200 a day. And, they can generate full-time employment by doing that. So we show you how to do that in the course. The course is basically $99 per week, which is $399. We have a deposit option. You can put down $199 to register and start the course. And then next week or the week after, you can pay the balance and so forth. We have that option on the website. But we also created this offer for the people who follow us in our groups and, on our email list, on our subscriber list and so forth, a referral fee. So if you refer someone, somebody who wants to, number one, become certified. It's open to Black people only, of course. We only teach Black people our culture. So if you know somebody who's interested, or you think that that's something that they should do, if they have been trying to figure out what they want to do, maybe they're working a 9-to-5, or maybe they don't have a job at the time right now, and they're trying to figure out what they can do, something that they can generate income with and also positively impact our community, you can refer them. And if once they register and they, pay their registration fee, then we will PayPal you or Cash App you or whatever method you use, $100 as a referral fee, because you're able to reach people that that we don't know about. So because you can reach them that otherwise we wouldn't have reached them or known that they, who they were, then you get that $100 referral fee. If you refer 4 people and 4 people register, then you will receive $100 per person. You'll receive $400 for referring them. So the only qualification, of course, is that the individual is a Black person. They don't have to have any prerequisite or any, background in ancestral culture and so forth. And again, when we teach this to organizations, schools, and so forth, it's on an introductory level. We don't go into deep detail about cosmology and so forth. We're teaching Susuw meditation in the context of utilizing it to enhance learning outcomes, productivity, reducing anxiety, empowering themselves with regard to health and overcoming weight loss and, all these different things, these things that have been scientifically proven with regard to meditation, enhancing various aspects of life. And then for people who go through that session, you go to a session and teach that. And if they ask you, I want to learn more about the cosmology and culture and ritual practice, then you can also, connect with them outside of the regular session. But just on the introductory level, people learning, no different than if you were teaching Pilates or some other form of exercise that benefits them immediately. Once they start meditating, they will see the change in their focus, their mindset, their every aspect. So it's all positive. So if you know someone who needs some focus to, for entrepreneurship, or they were looking for something, some people, I know somebody sign up, somebody they know, like, this is something you need to get on an entrepreneurial track. And then you can use this to, empower yourself economically. So all of that is on the website, and the Susuw page on the website. We put that link in the description box for the video, so you can get to that information. And yeah, so that's coming up Monday. So the class starts Monday. If you want to join the course, or if you want to assist somebody else to join the course. It begins Monday, so we only have a few days. So check out that information, and we'll move from there. Okay, so if there are no other questions, we're going to go ahead and end it here. If nobody else is in the chat room, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, and when you look on our page, let me just show you the link to the page so you can see what some of the information looks like. Okay, so this is the Susuw page on our website. And you'll see the trailer, and all you have to do when you're referring people, you can just send them to the page, and they'll see the trailer for the page, the trailer that you saw. They'll see the live that we actually did last night, going into detail about the referral fee and what people are to expect. And then they'll see the flyer, the payment buttons right here, different payment options. But then we also have a number of videos that we did on meditation, different aspects of the cosmology and so forth over the past few weeks, give people some insight into the kinds of things they'll be studying, as well as some advanced information that you wouldn't necessarily share with the introductory level if you're teaching. But if they wanted something more advanced, of course, you would have that information. Okay, so the question, where do you start if you can't focus? So in fact, if you look on this page right here, so this is our page, and when you scroll up, there are a couple of videos. The one we did right here, that's an introduction to the certification course and what it's about and all of that. You can check that out. And then you can also check out the Susuw Meditation and Effectuating Male-Female Sacred Balance. So we talk about that, and we talk about, Susuw meditation in general. And there are specific, approaches, and we use a specific approach. We did we addressed that in the video, one of the articles we published, and a basic ritual approach to meditation and, sitting down, breathing through the nose, all these different things, and counting the heartbeats and so forth, so you can focus internally. All that, you'll see that in this particular video, as well as the first one that we pointed out. And that's right there on the Susuw page. And let me put that. This is the link right here where that is. Put that in the chat room. Okay, so that's the link right there. All right. Okay, so yet I say we thank everybody for joining in with us. If you have any questions, of course, you hit us up via the email address or on our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and so forth. So yet I say we thank you for joining in, and Yebe Shabio, we will meet again.